Well, hi everyone. Thanks very much for joining this webinar today, during which we're going to discuss the ways and means we can organize the workplace of the future. I'm David Woods-Hale, Director of Marketing and Communications at AMBA and BGA. And shortly, I'm going to hand over to Erik Østergaard, author of Teal Dots in an Orange World, to lead us through the webinar. But just before we start, you'll see in your little panel on your screen, there's a little box where you can add some questions. So we're hoping to have lots of questions during the course of the webinar. So if you pop your questions in as we go, then I'll try and get through as many of them at the end as I can. So without further ado, I'm going to mute myself now and hand over to Erik to take us through the webinar.
Thanks, David. Thank you to all 138 of you who are taking 1 hour out to join me in this introduction or insight into what I'm thinking when it comes to organizing the workplace of the future. My name is Erik Korsvik Østergaard, and I think you did a tremendous job in pronouncing that, actually, David. It's a Danish name. I'm a Dane, and right now I'm in Copenhagen, Denmark, and it's 1 o'clock here and 2 o'clock and in the US. So in the UK, sorry. So as David said, please pop in questions so we can, at the end, we can take all of them and see how we can actually learn something from it. What I want to do is, there's just one slide about me actually before I dive into it. I'm an engineer. I used to work with software. I used to then grow into the realms of strategy and IT and leadership and organizational design in order to understand how we can create places that are relevant to the market and relevant to the employees at the same time. And as I write there, to create organizations where people want to show up because it's thrilling, it's engaging, it's fun, it has impact to get to work. I'm a Master of Science, as I said. I also play jazz. I work as a consultant, executive advisor in a number of organizations. I do a lot of keynotes. I do normally 40 per year, but due to the lockdown, of course, this has changed. I've done several webinars, of which this is one. So this is me, and yeah, I'm an author. I wrote this book, which is the content that I will cover today. Teal Dots in an Orange World, and how that all ties together. The intention is to start with some trends to see why are we actually discussing or looking at organizations in a different view. What's the reason for that? So we're going to go back 120 years to understand the trends, how that actually affects decision making and society and our kids and jobs and all that. That will lead to the middle part, which is, well, how does the modern organization look? That will be in around 20 minutes or so, where we'll start looking on that. So what's the design criteria for the modern organization? What's the mix that we're looking for? And then lastly, how do we actually create that ecosystems, that ecosystem where small teams in the modern organization can live, thrive, and survive? So that's the intention. I have 3 chunks: trends and the modern organization, and then something about the ecosystem for small teams. The narrative that I hear, or maybe have heard mostly over the past 20 years, is that of the well-oiled machine. I've met some CEOs or C-suite or board of directors who said that our organization is just like a well-oiled machine. We all know that we work like gears and cogs. Everybody knows what they do. It just fit together. But that narrative is gone. I don't think that many organizations still believe in it or actually are capable of designing their organization to that extent. I think much more, this is what we all experience, or what we need, is that teams are like soap bubbles. They are bursting, they are gathering, they are popping up. And this lady, the leader here, she's standing in the middle of these small teams trying to make the soap bubbles drift in the same way, with the same pace, maybe, to have and create a culture and organization where they actually can be. So that's the challenge, that we're going away from the well-oiled machine into something that is way more dynamic and adaptable, and maybe even fragile at places. There's both a reason for it, there's a need for it, and there's an opportunity actually to start recreating what an organization is right now in this decade. The wrong approach to doing this is, for example, this, oh, teal, I've heard all of that. we're going to have that everywhere. Or people are saying that's just one enterprise agile on the whole business, top down. Or they just say, oh, let's get started. If Spotify and Buurtzorg and Zappos and Menlo and Morningstar can do that, then so can we. And I don't believe that is right all the time. I don't believe we can have teal or agile or stuff like that everywhere. That is the premise for what I'm going to talk about here. If I can move this. So let's start with why we are actually looking at organizations in a new way, and so look at trends and how they influence us. Back in 1992, the American Army coined the term VUCA, and it's still relevant. Maybe somebody thinks it's, well, I heard of that so many times. Why are you still talking about that? Well, exactly because it's relevant. The world is considered volatile and uncertain and complex and ambiguous. It's a world that's hard to navigate in, and this is exactly the kind of world that the US Army tried to describe back in 1992, where things kept changing. So they need a term for that. This VUCA world creates or brings a lot of changes. Definitely there's a lot of changes going on. I'll come back to that. But it also at the same time creates possibilities. And those who can handle this both as a challenge and an opportunity for change, it's exactly those who are able to live in this world. These megatrends that we're looking at, well, most prominently is the lower one. It's that one that we always hear about, technology and digitalization. If we go back those 120 years, we have had a number of industrial revolutions going on, and we are now in the fourth of them. But we are talking about the explosion engine. We are talking about steam engines before that also. We're talking about internet, power. We're talking about our smartphones. We're talking about the App Store. All that has changed how technology actually drives businesses forward. So technology is increasing. We heard about the singularity, we heard about disruption, but all the other six on this slide are equally megatrends that affect what it is to be a leader, what it is to be an organization, what it is to be an employee in an organization. Number one, we are seeking purpose. We are seeking a meaningful work life. We are seeking to create value in our lives and as a business. Number two, we seek relationships at work. We seek networks also outside work. And in 2008-9-ish, Facebook and Twitter really underlined what it is to create huge global networks. And this is actually exactly why we are talking about internal networks, how we are mapping them, why we are mapping them, and also why something like Slack or Discord or Yammer or Microsoft Teams, all that are internal networks that are popping up, or platforms for internal networks that they have a place in the business life. Number three, more generations at work who are different when it comes to impact. That's why we're talking about Generation Z. We're talking about the millennials. They push the boundaries of what it is to be leaders, what an organization is. Diversity in leadership is also something that we're looking at, not only gender, but on a broader scale, cognitive diversity or backgrounds. We need employees or leaders who are good at starting stuff, or some that are good at driving stuff, or some that are good at closing stuff. We need all of that. If we acknowledge that we have a VUCA world, then we also need that we understand that we have new changes, and new changes, new challenges require new solutions. And we can only have that if we bring in the cognitive diversity in our leadership. It's also age, it's backgrounds, it's everything that we bring in so we can have the good debate and see our blind spots. Sustainability, yeah, we really need to take care of the world. We have one planet that we need to take care of. Well, maybe Elon Musk want to take us to Mars, but still we have this Earth that we need to take care of. That's why we have the 7 sustainability goals. We have Global Compact. We need to take care of the planet that we're in. And sustainability is also about handling both profit and people and purpose at the same time. It's taking care of all parts of the business at the same time. And then globalization and urbanization. We are global now, it happens, and there are actually more people living in the cities than outside the cities. which also changes infrastructure, our habits when it comes to purchase. All of that, all these seven, they are together changing what it is to be an organization, what it is to be leaders. So we need, as leaders, as organizations, new behavior to be able to stay relevant to the market and relevant to the employees. We need to embrace technology in a new way. For example, to have software that can help us look at the blind spots, or to have software that can help us provide communication or collaboration platforms. And there are new expectations to leadership, for example, empowerment, psychological safety, faster changes, smaller teams, more access to leaders. All that is actually why changes are coming. So there are some claims about what kind of future that we're looking into with all these changes, all this disruption that we have talked about. So some of the claims are, for example, this 40% of the Fortune 500 companies will be gone in 10 years. Babson School of Business claimed that, and I think it was actually 8 or 10 years ago, and it actually showed to be true. And a large group of the large companies are undergoing massive changes right now, and they need to do something to stay relevant to the market, to stay relevant to the employees. They are being challenged by maybe a startup organization that are creating mobile solutions for payment, or that are creating healthcare in a new way, where the business model are challenged, either from product delivery to service or subscription models, where you don't own your stuff either, where data is the currency. So several of the organizations have shorter lifespan. How do you respond to that? It also means that half of our work can and will be automated. And it's actually good to have some of that automated, because it's the hard friction that we want to take away, be put into software, where we want the good friction to stay. The good friction is our conversation, it's our nuances when it comes to debate, our dialogue, when we meet people that are cognitively different than us. So we need that good friction in order to solve the problems in a new way. Actually, 20% of our jobs as leaders can be automated. That's something that I think it was McKinsey who documented that 2 years ago. And this is something that we're going to see very much of, that we're going to have artificial intelligence coming in and help us as organizations to better collaborate, to be better leaders. We're also going to see many more freelancers coming in, people who say that I don't want to work for a classic corporate organization anymore. I'm fed up with that. I want to try something else. Now is the time. And this trend actually is most prominent right now when it comes to female around 40 years old. They are leaving their organizations, or they actually want to have more jobs. I'm part of a network where it's a standard phrase, so what is your side gig? Not questioning whether you have a side gig, that's a given, but what is it? They take for granted that you have maybe 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, or work in different constellations. You might have a coffee shop, you might be an IT consultant, you might work with strategy, whatever. You might have several areas that you work with. And lastly, we're definitely going to see the millennial mindset rolling in, seeking meaningfulness, challenging us when it comes to the amount of freedom that we want. And these people, they are impatient. They want to take action now. We want leadership. We want leadership now, is what they say. This is claims about the future. Are they true? Well, yeah. It definitely, they manifest themselves, but how do you respond to them? And is it unevenly distributed? Maybe this is most prominent in some parts of the world. When I talk to people that are focused on China, for example, they are way ahead of us when it comes to use of IT, use of new ways of working. Maybe they have a different aspect when it comes to how to do that, but it's definitely coming. This is something that you need to be aware of. This is coming out of the mega trends going back 120 years. So organizations are changing. The leadership is changing. Gallup pulled out this slide. This is from 2016. That's where I saw it the first time, where they claim that, well, following the change, the mega change of the mega trends, and following the new approach to work, this is what we're going to see. But I think this is partly wrong. This is part of the truth. I think we're going to see a mix of these two. I think the right side with purpose and development and coaching and ongoing conversation and strength and life is an augmentation of the other part. I think we're making a mistake if we see that as a total shift. I see, and this is one of the reasons for actually calling it teal dots in an orange world, we're going to see a mix of these two. We're going to see a new form of workplace where we're going to see less of this on the left side, humans being seen as resources. Resources, that's like internet, buildings, money, water, not human beings. Humans are humans. We're going to see less top management and planning because the rate of change makes it nearly impossible for us to actually plan what we're going to do. I have heard top leaders say that they have gone from 3-year planning horizon to 3 months. It sounds like a clickbait article, but it's actually something that I have heard maybe 10 or 15 top leaders say to me, that they cannot plan for 2021. They have no idea what they're going to do. We're also going to see less repetitive work and focus on simple tasks, because we're going to have software and hardware robots to actually work with us and to take part of that. Less secrecy and less of the feeling that I'm at work. This is going to be replaced or augmented or outbalanced by all this. People, culture, delegation and mandate, because leaders cannot make all the decisions. We need to work with each other to understand how to make decisions. A lot of clever experiments, a lot of digitalization, a lot of what is complex and creativity work, a lot of transparency and access to data, and then the notion of belonging, of fellowship. Not only fellowship when it comes to leaders, but also fellowship. You are part of my clan. I'm part of this clan. I want to be part of this group of people. So this is the new form of workplace that we are going to see coming out of the megatrends. Interesting part is then how do these organizations then look? What's the future of organizations when it comes to handling all this? Well, I'm very inspired by Responsive Org. I think you should look up their website and look up their manifesto. They have very nicely pulled out 5 dimensions of paradoxes that you need to balance: profit versus purpose, and hierarchy versus networks, etc., etc. What I have just done is to split them apart and then put a slider in between these opposites, because it's always a balance. It's always a balance between, are we profit-oriented or are we purpose-oriented? Do we need both? Yeah, but to what extent? Do we need hierarchy and network? Yeah, but where and how much? So I would really recommend to look up Responsive Org and maybe take this slide or some version of it and take it out to your leadership group, remove the dots in the sliders, and then question your leadership team, where are we and where do we want to be? So it's the balance that we're looking at. We're looking at organizations who want to be to balance exactly these opposites and to be, as I said, relevant to the market and relevant to the employees. And that means that we are seeing a trend going from command and control, slowly drifting through command of teams towards team of teams or network of teams. And this is not new. This is something that actually started 3 decades ago, where, for example, the Agile Manifesto that was written in 2001, but teams or approaches to teams of teams that have survived over these 30 years are, for example, what I call the SALT group: Sociocracy, Agile, Lean Startup, and Teal are examples of team structures that actually works also inside big corporate organizations with maybe 1,000 or 10,000 employees. The small teams are actually what we're going to see, and I do stress small. We are talking about 5 employees, maybe 7 if you're great at handling feelings and emotions. Because the way that we work when it comes to this is so demanding when it comes to relationships, that we as a group, we tend to be a very tight group consisting of strong relationships, also meaning that the groups cannot grow that big, because then we have to connect with other people to a very large extent, and that means that the groups, when they grow, they split into 2 or into 3. So small groups of sociocracy or agile or lean startup or teal thinking is actually what we are seeing. This is data that we're looking at right now. So instead of forcing groups together, we say, so this is the way teams work. Let's go with that. Let's go with the nature of teams instead of forcing them together. So these four are what I see most prominent right now: sociocracy, holacracy, Agile and Scrum as we know it, and I really, really like that, especially the last part of it, which is the retrospective, where we talk about how we work together. Lean Startup, the thinking of build, measure, learn is exactly what we need to handle the amount of changes where we cannot predict and we cannot plan what is going to happen in 2021. We need to measure and learn all the time. And Teal, the growth and the evolvement of Teal from power-based to the wheels and cogs, as we talked, the machine, all the way out to the self-living, to the self-led teams, is exactly it's the democratized organization that we're looking for. It's based on involvement, it's based on learning, it's based on small steps and adjustments. This is actually what we need. This is the future of organizations. I'm very much a fan of the work that Frederic Laloux has done. His book from 2014 called Reinventing Organization coined these 5 colors. Actually, he's inspired by spiral dynamics. But these 4 colors, red, amber, orange, green, and teal, are types of cultures that he has identified and worked with, starting from the inner with the wolf pack, which is management by gunpoint. Then the amber one, he calls it also the army. I'm not sure that people from the army really like that. When I talked to the officers from the Danish army, they are more teal and they are more unbossed than just being placed in that box. The orange one is the machine. This is where normally all of our classic corporate structures are placed. The green one is the family, and the teal one is actually, well, the one with the agile, the anti-fragile organizational wholeness, self-management. All that is, I think we have all been there or been part of those teams where it really, really works. We have the mandate, we have the decision power, and work is really, really thrilling. So it's these 5 that we're looking at. And these 5 that actually are making up our organizations. Red, the mafia. Amber is the army. Orange is the machine. And green is the family. And then teal is the living organism. These are 5 organizational structures. These are the building blocks that we are going to use forward. When it comes to change management, when it comes to actually engaging with people, we have maybe more of a push in one side, whereas the pull, the invitation, the democratized invitation to dialogue, to collaboration, is way over in the other end. It's the teal and the living organism. That's how change, that's how dialogue is, and that's how the gravitational points of the organization also are. It's a pull situation. So speaking of that, now it's time for a poll. Actually, David, I think we would like to have a poll. I would like to hear. So from you out there, what color is your organization? And mostly, David, could you help us with that?
Absolutely, audience participation time. So the poll's now appeared on your screen. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to fill it in and let you know when I'm about to close it.
I'm keen to know how that is showing out.
So about half of you have voted, so I'll give it another couple of seconds.
Mm-hmm. And we are 190. That's nice. We are.
Okay. Right, I'm just going to close the poll now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 4% are saying red, 14% are saying amber, 46% are saying orange, 27% are saying green, and 9% are saying teal.
Right. That's a 19 are saying teal. I really, really like that. I would like to follow up actually with the second poll, David, because I would like to hear, and now I just changed the slide. When I look at your team, the very closeness of your own team, well, how is that? So if we can take the second poll and actually compare those two, that would be superb.
Absolutely, that's on the screen now.
Superb. Normally there is a difference, and that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Okay, I'll just leave it for a few more seconds.
And there was just one more attendee coming in, and he or she is going to miss some part of it. But welcome.
Okay, so about 2/3 of you have voted, so I'll just close the poll now.
Yep.
Okay, so this time 8% are saying red, 4% amber, 12% orange, 56% green, and 20% teal.
Perfect. Well, this is thank you, David. That was superb. Thanks for the support. This is something that I very often see, that the closer you get to your team, the closer you get to your own community, your micro community, the more green and teal you actually get. And on the larger scale that you look at in the organization, the more orange is present. This is normal. I think it's not normal that the amount of red actually grows from 4 to 8%. If I hear you right, David, it grew from 4 to 8. This is a bit atypical. It might not be the same people going back and forth, but this is the overall trend. Actually, the closer you get to your team, the more green, the more teal it is. That is natural, because we are creating fellowship with the ones that we are working with. We're creating a better organization, a better teaming. And this is actually what we want to support. This is spot on what we want to have more. We want to codify how we can do that. How can we take that learning and scale it up? Because one of the things that I have learned is that going teal, going agile is really hard to scale. It's easy. It's easier to actually do that in one team, two teams, 3 teams, maybe, to have an agile release train, but it's really hard to do that on large scale. So should you do that? And if not, so what's the other answer to actually handling that? This is what I'm looking for. The wrong approach to doing this is you have seen this slide before, just to say we want to do this everywhere. Let's just go agile. Let's just go teal. Let's pull away all the hierarchy. We all for networks. We all self-led. I don't think that is going to happen very many places. I've seen it, but it's really, really hard to do. Instead, this is the right approach. We need small autonomous units and teams, teal or agile in some places, and maybe something more structured and hierarchical elsewhere. And then we create a world, a platform, an ecosystem that all our teams can live in. This is the solution, as I see it. It's to create a platform, some place where these teams can live, and then have small elements, small units of teal or agile somewhere else. So what I want and what I propose is to have a mix of this. I want to have a mix of teal dots, the small units, in orange world. So orange, right now, I'm going to go forward and I'm going to use orange as a catch-all term for hierarchy and top-down and blah, 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 all the other things that you can see over there, where we work with best practices and fixed mindset. And I want teal to be a catch-all term for all the other things, all the progressive self-governance and principles, autonomy, good enough for now practices, and the growth mindset. So we want to have a mix of these two. This is actually what we're going to look at. And this, I know, is an approach that I can copy. I've been part of creating this in organizations 10, 15 times in transformations, going away from all orange, all amber into a mix. So this is a recipe that I know that I can copy elsewhere. It is one answer to the challenge, but I know this is a recipe that I can copy. We want a mix of this. Jacob Morgan did this drawing. I think is brilliant, and I think it's a brilliant name to call it flatarchy, because it's actually a mix of flat and hierarchy that we want. We want flat somewhere, a flat team with no leaders or self-management, and we want hierarchy somewhere else, maybe between the teams. And there's actually a point in that there is something that goes on between the teams. The white space between teams is something that we need to take care of. And I will come back to that, how we actually do that. So how does this actually look? How can we create that? So I've been studying these kind of organizations for the past decade. And in the book, what actually made me write the book is 4 observations that I had about these kinds of organizations. 4 observations that I have. First of all, extraordinary things happens in small teams only. As I said, 5 employees, maybe 7 if you are great at handling emotions and feelings. And this I have seen both in service areas, with engineers. I have seen that in call centers. I've seen that on strategic level. I've seen that when it comes to IT developers. Things happen in small teams, and actually the note down there, Wu, Wang, and Yuan's documented that also, that innovation happens in small teams, where taking innovations into to business happens in big teams. So there's a difference in when it comes to work. Extraordinary things happens in small teams only. The second thing that I saw was that work happens in highly connected networks. Some 10 years ago, 1 out of 10 dialogues was across the organization. Only 1 out of 10. Now it's 9 out of 10 conversations that are across the network. So work happens in highly connected networks. I do a number of organizational network analysis to document that, to see how the dynamics actually are moving, and how that paves the way for understanding the dynamics of the informal leadership. Also, number 3, tactical execution happens when touch points are frequent and physical. And physical right now in a lockdown, working virtually, has to be seen where we actually meet in front of, for example, a virtual Kanban board. It could be Trello or Jira or some other Microsoft Planner, it's called, where we meet in front of that and actually debate in a Scrum style or a stand-up style what tactical decisions we need to make. And the last thing that I've seen is that don't be afraid of reorganizations. Reorganization as an activity is a pivot point for the leadership that is needed for the transformational leadership. So when you find the right amount of changing, not the whole organization all the time, but small bits and pieces here, and maybe this area here, and maybe a slice here, and maybe change and pivot, that actually supports both the leadership, both the formal and the informal leadership, how to actually understand that. So that underlining with this slide says that, okay, we need to grasp the network of teams in a new way. We need to understand sociocracy, agile, lean startup, and teal, and how to make that happen. What I have found, and this is like the clue of my book, I've found that there is an ecosystem that we need to create, and it consists of 9 elements. In the middle, we place the self-managed delivery team. And that could be based on agile, that could be based on Scrum, it could be based on sociocracy or teal, but still it's all 3 words here. It has to be self-managed, it has to have some kind of delivery, some kind of task, some kind of problem that it's solving, and it has to be a team. It will grow from a group to a team once we know how to engage with each other. I have written or put 4 employees standing here hand in hand. 5 is the maximum that I would recommend. Small teams that are self-managed and deliver something or produce a product, or work towards having a team feeling. Around this, we create an organizational ecosystem. In the top, we have 3 parts that are part of supporting them in their work. First of all, a purposeful organization that works as a platform on which all these teams can live and thrive and survive. Like the lady that we saw in the middle, standing, holding and pushing towards all these soap bubbles. It has to be purposeful. You have to have you know what problem you're solving for whom and what they can do, what kind of value they get out of it. Not only financial value, it could also be functional value, or it could be emotional value. And then all of our support functions are going to be changed into support services, like finance and legal and marketing and all things that support the team in their job. It's support organizations. One of those that I'm inspired by, a Finnish organization, they have torn down all their group functions and only recreated those that the team request. So they have totally flipped the thinking about support to the other end. And in the middle, culture, strong culture, or maybe even better formulated, a strong description of behavior that you want to have in your organization. You absolutely need to put behavior to the test to say, okay, we want transparency. Yeah, but what does that mean actually? We need a candid and an open and honest conversation. Yeah, but what does that mean actually? And then fellowship. We want to create an organization where people want to show up. We want to create fellowship. We want to create what's it called? Clan feeling. We want to create some place where people actually feel that they belong. Tribal, and that's what it works with, the tribal feeling of them. And then in the top right corner, and that's really crucial, everybody in these organizations need a coach. Everybody need it, and it's not only your direct report or your direct manager. It could also be somebody from marketing that you really want to have as your coach. It could be somebody else, but everybody need to have some coach that can help them. If you can encourage your employees to actually appoint the coach themselves, to say, I want her, she's good, she can train me something. That's a good way of doing it. I have seen that happen, and it's really, really strong when you set that free. Everybody can choose their own leader. Everybody can choose their own coach. That is powerful. Then it comes to delivering stuff, producing stuff. Then the team clearly needs to be able to have the mandate themselves. Clearly need distributed leadership and distributed decision making. We need to create the room for them to make decisions. This is always hard, and this is maybe one of the toughest questions to answer. So who makes the decisions? Who actually decides whether or not to have that strategic move, or to hire that employee, or to put that feature into our software, or to build that kind of steel rod or whatnot? Can the team decide that? Yeah, it can. If you consult the right people, if you have the advice process, for example, as we talk about in holacracy, absolutely. And then somebody need to help the team. Somebody needs to help the team to see blind spots that they cannot see themselves, and that's why we have advisory boards. And from now on, the name steering committee is gone. We just said that the team has to be self-managed and self-led, so we of course cannot have a steering committee. Instead, we have advisory boards that provides insight, good knowledge into the team and their daily or weekly work. Maybe saying, oh, it could be a really good idea that you don't go into Kazakhstan right now because of something. Or it could be a really good idea that you talk with that team over there because they are damn good at working with the healthcare or whatnot. We need distribute the leadership and the advisory boards for the team to feel safe. And then there are other teams that you need to coordinate with. And this is the last row down here. In order to coordinate with the other teams, then you need, number one, white space mastery. And white space is the area between teams. Somebody needs to take care of the space between teams, the space between the soap bubbles, to move knowledge and experience from one team to the other. It's unfair if we demand for every team to also be aware of distributing their knowledge, to create knowledge sharing and all that. Somebody needs to take care of that. It can, and it happens sometimes through a software platform. It could be Slack, it could be Yammer, it could be what else, but it is most often done by persons who have that feeling of, you might listen to that guy over here, you should talk to so. And then in the middle, inspired by what goes on in Scrum and actually in SAFe when it comes to scaling agile, rhythms, meeting on a regular basis inside your team and with those that you coordinate with, maybe on weekly and bi-weekly and monthly basis, and then to have the mega sprints of planning for 3 months in mega sprints and breaking that down into smaller chunks of maybe 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Rhythms in and across your network and your organization. And this is also where we ensure that all the compliance issues are handled, compliance and ISO and GDPR and GXP and whatnot. And this is also where your key processes are kicked into gear. That's where they actually live and get executed. And lastly, in the lower right corner, to make sure that you have a network, to make sure that you understand who are the organizational influences, who are the bridges between teams or between business units, who has the relationships, not only when it comes to professional work, but also when it comes to personal stuff, like who do you go to talk about your mom or your daughter or your dog or football or politics, all the things that are actually part of being personal, not only being a professional being, but only be a human being at work. And this is the ecosystem that we need to put in place. And somebody needs to lead that ecosystem. And that means that the CEO role changes. The E in CEO changes to be, well, you are the ecosystem officer. As leader, you need to make sure that you lead the ecosystem. So your leadership skills for doing that are these 4. You need to lead the flow of information. You need to lead that people are listening, that you have transparency and dialogue and feedback loops for single and double loop learning. And you need to lead interactions, that people meet and they learn, that you have the white space set up. And you need to, number 3, to lead cross-boundary problem solving, that people come in with different looks on the organization. Maybe you even invite your customer in across the organization perimeter, maybe the universities, maybe a startup company that can do something that you cannot do. So you have the cross-pollination of skills. And last, you need to make sure that all the intercompany mechanisms are good, that they are healthy, that they work. If they don't work, then challenge them, replace them, make an experiment with how we can actually do that to support the individual employees. So that's actually what I had, David. And from my clock, I can see that it is spot on. So we can have some questions from the audience, if there are any.
Thank you. Yeah, there's loads actually. Thanks very much for the presentation. It was absolutely fascinating, and even better, you kept time. So we've got lots of time for questions.
I have my smartphone standing right there with a timer on it. So.
So the first question we've had come in is somebody's asking, what drives these changes in organizational structure towards the ecosystem that you've discussed, and how do we know that it will be sustainable in the future?
Yeah, to the last question, how do we know if it's sustainable? Well, we absolutely know that it is not. We absolutely know that we need to change this over and over and over again. And that's because, to answer your first part of the question, these organizations that I work with that are undergoing these transformations, they do it for 2 reasons. They want to stay relevant to the market. They want to stay relevant to the employees. They want to stay relevant to a market where the business models are changing, where the cash flow is changing, where the buyers are changing their habits when it comes to purchasing. And they want to be able to change their own organization fast enough so that they can produce what the customers want in the fast enough and deliver it in a way that is fast enough. So I hope that actually answers it, David.
Cool, thank you very much. So the next question we've had come in says, do you distinguish between coaching and mentoring? And do you think that mentoring should also be part of the ecosystem?
Good point. Yeah, I do distinguish. To me, it boils down to the matter of the number of answers that you also have. As a premise, you should always be a mentor, but where you have the understanding of how to dosage your questions and your answers. To ask good questions is the way that you can focus on the curiosity, both for the team and for the employee, for the individual. But you also need to understand when to actually come with answers and say, oh, you need to stop that. The right way to do that right now to go to your advisory board and ask for some more money. So yeah, I do distinguish between those two.
Great, thank you. Loads of questions coming through now. Somebody asks, if humans are not a resource, in the same way that the CEO should be rebranded, do you think that the HR department should also be changed? And if so, what should it be called?
P&O, people and organization, or P&C, people and culture. Yeah, absolutely. We got HR management. Two of those three words have to be changed. Human resource, people are not resources, and management, you don't manage them. So and many organizations in Denmark are actually changing their HR departments to P&C or P&O for the exact same reason.
Okay, thank you. Somebody asked if there's any specific types of business model or organization that you work particularly well within this ecosystem, within this model. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, oh, that's a good question. We actually saw that first maybe 5 or 10 years ago, where the disruption wave actually hit the organizations or the businesses where we see this first, and that is organizations that is built on or produces software. For example, banks. Any bank is a piece of software, and the strength of a software is actually that you can change the features very fast, maybe within 1 month or 6 months if you need to go some kind of QA QC. So businesses that are built on software, banking, finance, pension funds, stuff like that, are the ones that we saw first. Now these changes are moving into businesses that are more that have more inertia. Healthcare, infrastructure, education, and some parts of travel like airlines. They are seeing the changes in their area now, not necessarily with their key process, because that's still very slow, but the way that they engage with the startup companies, how they engage with decision making, how they engage with the public, with their customers, that is absolutely changing. Yeah, so it started with the first wave, as I call it, of disruption, and now we're going into the second wave of disruption with businesses that have inertia.
Okay, so the next question is, the number one reason that CEOs get fired is mismanaging change. In light of this, do you think that senior managers are capable of the transformations that you've described?
Oh, that's a tough yes or no question. The fun thing is that I actually see some of the C-suite employees or C-suite leaders that I work with. They are very much eager to do that, and they are more risk eager than their executive layer or their board of directors. So there's definitely a trend right now going towards combining both leadership and change leadership at the same time. Many of the leaders that I work with, they see that vast amount of their leadership is about change management, but they need to work on letting go of decision making, letting go of decision power, and that's a habit that both they have and the organization have, because they just flock to their leaders for answers, and we need to be brave and courageous enough to distribute our leadership when it comes to change management also.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else is asking, when you talked about reorganization, how often do you think that changes need to be applied? Because at some level, it's about striking the balance between change happening and also it being healthy for employees and the company itself.
Yeah, let's change the question around and see what is too slow. I think having those every second year change, I think that's too slow. I've been part of actually changing the organization every week. Not the full organization, but some parts, bits and pieces here and there that we adjust on a weekly basis, that we actually set every Friday. And that was an organization, we were at that point 250, yeah, where we every Friday sat down and actually massaged some parts of the organization. Oh, this team needs to be, and we need to solve that problem, blah, blah, blah. In the larger organizations, I have seen changes happen every quarter, every half year, and I think that that pace seemed to push the culture forward, actually. So that's my feeling of it.
Thank you. The next question is, do you have any advice on how to avoid silos and the silo mentality in the decision-making process?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, good questions, David. I would say it's depending on how you have designed your silos. Normally, they are a silo due to either geography or functions. And when you start having the learning that every business problem you have needs cross-organizational collaboration, then it also means that if you understand that, then the decision power also needs to be cross-organizational. And when you create that team, then give them the power to make decisions, but stress to them that you need to seek advice with your leaders, or with a subject matter expert, or with those who can provide insight to your blind spots. So once you see that every problem is cross-organizational, then you also give them the mandate to actually act on it.
Thank you very much. So the next question is, do you think that policymakers have an impact on accelerating the shift, particularly when it comes to regulation industries such as the gig economy? And with that in mind, do you think that some national cultures are better placed than others when it comes to building the organic organizations of the future?
That's a good one. I'm not that good when it comes to the governmental questions, but I can see that we have learned from the pandemic and the lockdown that there's definitely a willingness to support both the small and the large organization when it comes to that. Some governments are good at having incubator hubs. And those who do that, they also encourage the large corporate organizations to actually work with them to penetrate the walls between the startup organizations and the big ones. And that is, it's a way of nudging them into having lower hierarchies and to have new ways of working. I have learned that, Denmark, where I'm part of, Denmark, the Dutch, UK, actually, the Swiss, that's where I most prominently have seen this happening. Some areas of the US, I've actually seen it in Mexico also. I was supposed to travel to Shanghai to meet a woman there that are working with teal and sociocracy in China. It was unfortunately stalled due to the pandemic. But if you look at Gert Hofstede and the work that he has been doing, you can have some hints when it comes to power distance, when it comes to the balance between masculine and feminine virtues in organizations, in cultures, that hints towards Denmark, the Nordics, Dutch, stuff like that.
Thank you. Loads of questions coming in, so I'm just going to try and get through as many as I can. Apologies if I don't get to your question. Somebody else is asking if you've got any advice on how you can potentially mitigate negative impact from diversity, for example, age, generation, educational background, when managing change in a team.
how you can mitigate negative impact. Was that what you said?
Yes, yeah.
I have always started out with my teams to not focus on the job that we are doing, but focus on who we are. I very much stress the we part of work when it comes to, well, cognitive differences or age differences, that we flock together because it's us. We are together on this. Yeah, we need to solve this problem. We do it together. But the first thing is to spend a day or two on actually talking about who we are, how we want to collaborate, how we can use each other's cognitive strengths. Also, what kind of rhythms do we have when it comes to work? Do we start at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock? Do we start at 8? What happens if you sit at night and you really like to work at night? Is it okay to send an email? So to vocalize your expectations to work and to understanding something like, what is a deadline? What is a yes? How do you say no to stuff? How do you provide insight and perspective to each other's work? So to me, to mitigate the negative sides of it is actually to bring people together as a clan, as a tribe.
Okay, I think we've got time for just one more question. I think that builds on what you've just said there. Obviously, the world is in lockdown. A lot of people are working from home. How can you really build this culture, this tribal feeling in a virtual office environment or remote working?
Oh yeah, I have been in this office for 3 months working from here and working through this camera. A typical day, I am both in Denmark. I might be in Hong Kong and in Dubai virtually. What we always start with virtually has nothing to do with work. We talk about on a scale from 1 to 6, how are you? So we actually want to really know how you are, and then we focus in and say, so what's that thing you have on your wall? And there we just saw your cat walking by. All that thing that makes us human. So focus on the human parts when it comes to work, and then when we are done, that say, okay, yeah, let's work. And then we stop the meetings also way. So how was that, and how are you feeling now, and what are you looking forward to until we see each other tomorrow? So actually stealing things from having the Scrum stand-ups and the retrospective, that's how I have been part of actually doing that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for answering the questions. I think we're pretty much out of time just now, so apologies to anybody we didn't get to. But we did get through quite a lot, so good stuff. Well, all that remains for me to say is thank you once again, Erik, for a fantastic presentation, really insightful and lots of practical takeaways as well. So thank you very much. Just to let everyone know, in about a week or so, you'll all receive an email with the full presentation recording, so as you can all listen to it again at your leisure. And our next webinar is taking place on Thursday, the 16th of July at 12 p.m. BST, and we'll be talking about how to practice engaged thinking. So if you haven't already signed up for that, you can do so at the Amber website. And also you should get a feedback questionnaire at the end of the webinar. So it was really useful for us to get your thoughts and work out what you enjoyed, what maybe we could improve or change going forward. So if you can take 2 seconds to fill that in, we'd be really grateful. But thanks once again, Erik. Thank you all for listening. And I look forward to speaking to you again next month.